Final Fantasy XIV. Critically acclaimed MMORPG. Many things set this game apart from others in its genre. The massive solo storyline, the character design, the glamour system, but most prominently, the ability to jump around the jobs as you wish, without having to make alts or completely restart. The job system in Final Fantasy XIV affects the design of the entire game, from the quest design offering specific quests for roles and jobs within those roles, right down to the urban planning, with the 3 major starting cities using the job guilds as major landmarks for the Aethernet transport system. They are iconic. And speaking of icons, no, not that kind of icon, each job is represented by an icon, coloured to their role of healer, tank, or DPS. And these symbols, like all symbols, logos, and pictograms, are supposed to be clear, concise, and somewhat representative of the job they're supposed to be representing. No two should be mistakable for each other, nor should you look at one and think it belongs to any other job except the one it belongs to. In addition to this, they should all work together as a set, meaning they should use similar visual language, and they shouldn't have one that sticks out among the rest. For a great example of how a system of pictograms work, see the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games pictograms. Look at them. Beautiful set of clear, concise icons. You can see at a glance which one is which, with little ambiguity between them, while at the same time they all just go together, you know? For a bad example of these, check out the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. Thin lines and rotational symmetry, while stylistically nice, make them blur together, and it's difficult to decipher at a glance which one's which in this sea of almost swastikas. So, looking at the good and the bad, let's see how the jobs of Final Fantasy XIV stack up by putting each one in a good old-fashioned tier list, ranking them on their visuals, what I think they represent, if anything, if they take into account the lore of the job, and whether or not they fit in with the rest of the visual language of the job icon set. But before we get started, my bona fides. I run a design studio, I've been a branding designer for around a decade. I've designed logos, icons, that kind of thing for companies, creators and brands big and small across the world. I've worked with New York Times bestselling authors, and I've had my work on the front page of Steam and on WWE programming. I've linked to my portfolio in the description below. Take a look if you want to see what I can do. But back to these icons. Let's go through role by role and take a look at each of these icons to find the good, the bad, the clever, and the downright sinful. And along the way I've spoken to other Warriors of Light about their main job, to see what they think about the icon that defines the way they adventure through Aetheris and beyond. Starting off with the tanks, we have Paladin, the sword and shield wielding boys that have the power of God and anime on their side to help them protect the delicate and squishier members of their team by presenting them with the rear end of whichever big bad they decide to send to the Shadow Realm that day. And their icon is a shield, which at first glance seems a little uninspired given that the icon for tanks themselves is also a shield, but they are the only tank class to wield shields, which seems a bit of a misstep by all the other classes since their entire job is to get hit a lot, but I digress. It's a shield, but it's a tiny bit more than that. It's the same shape of shield that the most of the iconic Paladin armor sets are seen wearing, which is a nice touch. Giving them riot shields would have just been weird when their icon is this specific kind of shield. And speaking of the icon, its shape is also reminiscent of the flag of Uldar, for which the Paladin job was created to be the Royal Guard, which is nice. These 3 little doodads at the top also could be hearkening to the architecture of the city. See how there are domes and spikes if we look at the city from far away? It's cute. I'm not sure if it's intentional, but I like it. They also make it look like a vastly simplified version of the job gauge that Paladins use. See those little wings that spike the spike out of the top? Lovely. My minor criticism is that the shape of the shields is inconsistent between the job icon and the job gauge. See how in the job gauge the top part of the shield points upwards and is flat on the icon? Inconsistent. I hate it, and now you can't unsee it either. B tier. It's a strong start. Let's hope it stays that way. Next up is Warrior, the class that cannot be killed no matter how hard you try. They can even heal the rest of the party at higher levels, so if you're a healer and you fancy an easy ride, pair up with a warrior and you're basically able to ignore those off-global cooldown heals unless something goes disastrously wrong, or you're doing the big Mount Gold pull. So what did the genius designers between this critically acclaimed game decide to use to symbolize the biggest, baddest, sturdiest bastard in the game, the eponymous warrior of light, the patron saint of, what are you gonna do, kill me? Well, it's an axe head, which, I mean, it's not inaccurate, they do use axes, but like, is that really all you have? It's not even a cool looking axe head, it doesn't even have a handle. This took 20 seconds to make in Adobe Illustrator. Look, I'll do it right now, time me. It's stupidly simple and doesn't portray the attitudes and playstyle or the history behind the job. It is the minimum viable product, especially when paired with the really cool looking iconography of the warrior's job gauge. I don't see how you can look at this and think, yeah, that'll do. D tier, must try harder. Dark Knight, the edgy boys of the tanking world. If your favourite game and childhood crush were both Shadow the Hedgehog, and you just think depressing emo rock music is inspirational, then Dark Knight is the class for you. It's got the best written job quests in the game, an introspective look into being the Warrior of Light, while also kind of being an apology for making you do so many menial fetch quests in A Realm Reborn. And the icon is, well, it's the first of the more abstract ones. It's kind of a great sword, but it has this star thing coming out the top. At first glance, I had trouble figuring out what it was supposed to be. Is it an explosion or an angry face? Are they supposed to be just very, very big, angry-looking handguards for the sword? Perhaps. Well, I think it's supposed to be an abstraction of the Chaos symbol, which is an 8-pointed star. Obviously, given the tiny canvas we have to work with, reducing it to 6 points makes it more legible at a small size, while still keeping the flavour of the Chaos star in play. And Chaos is something that the Dark Knight is associated with, its armour being known as Chaos armour. If the Chaos star isn't where it's come from, I suppose they did just approach the icon the same way they approached the Dark Knight's armour. They took it, and they added a bunch of angry-looking spikes, and now it looks cool. And you know, it does kind of look cool. C tier. For cool.
Hello, I am Sviatogor Weish, Svai to friends. My main class is Dark Knight. Going over to the first, kind of had to do the whole darkness thing. Swinging a big sword around is very fun.
What do you like about being a Dark Knight? What's kept you there?
Mostly the ability to do a decent amount of damage and tank a good bit of damage without inherently tank stuff, and also it just looks cool. It's also the class I have the best glam for.
All the classes in Eorzea and beyond, they're all represented by these little icons. Do you ever think about the icons for jobs, or are they just something that's just become part of this background?
They're background, but they're enough where I can recognize. It's like they're good for quick identification, but I haven't really put too much thought into them.
So thinking about the Dark Knight specifically. What are your thoughts on the Dark Knight's icon?
It's interesting because it looks like it could be a Dark Knight sword without a handle. If you look at the little star on the top of it, if you put a little handle there, that could just be a Dark Knight sword. Or it's just kind of a slightly messed up star. Honestly, I think it serves its purpose. This sort of visual design is not my area of expertise. I don't really. I think it fits in with all the, and I think it fits in with all the other icons just fine.
That last bit is an important thing that not a lot of people have brought up, but is a big part of like the beginning of this video. Like, it fits in with the rest really well. I've been building a big tier list of all the icons as I've been going along. If you had to put Dark Knight's on this tier list, where would it go?
It being a main class, you want to put it near the top. But at the same time, at the same time, it's like I would definitely put it above samurai. But below something like paladin or sage. Top third, definitely.
So it's a strong B tier.
Yes.
Gunbreaker. Last of the tanks. This one is, in my uninformed opinion, the most Final Fantasy of them all. I mean, look at it. It's a gun and a sword. They have these cool-looking duster jackets and, oh, so many straps and buckles. This is peak Final Fantasy shit. I've never actually played the job, or any other Final Fantasy game for that matter, so maybe this entire intro is just me talking out of my ass. So instead, let's talk about something I actually understand. The icon for Gunbreaker is, at first glance, it just looks like a Z. But that doesn't make any sense, does it? Gunbreaker doesn't start with a Z, it doesn't even have a Z in it. So it must be something else. And I am here to tell you, it's actually a lot else. What I see in this icon is a gun barrel, or perhaps an explosion, being sliced in half. I've seen it talked about being both ways, but I prefer to see it as a gun barrel, with these points on the circle being the 6 chambers of a revolver. And the blade slicing in half, we have the gun and the sword, and that makes both parts of the class's iconic weapon: gun, sword, gunblade. It's actually quite well done, and I'll even forgive these vertical points for being uneven and out of balance, because while this point and this point are off balance, this point perfectly balances with this point, and if we shifted it, the whole icon would look uneven and weighted towards one side. This is kind of like when you realize the triangle in the YouTube logo isn't centered, because if it were centered mathematically, it wouldn't look centered to the eye, because one side of the triangle has more weight than the other. And this isn't me diminishing the explosion interpretation as well. I like that being in there as well. Logos can be multiple things. In fact, if it can do that and still keep looking clear and concise, that's bonus points. So I'm choosing to see the background as both a gun barrel and an explosion, because gunbreakers are a very explosive class. This is going to be our first A tier. Good stuff. Let's talk about heals, baby. Let's talk about more HP. And where to start but the healeriest of the healers, the White Mage. And I mean, White Mage is like the healing class, right? It was the only available healer in the original 1.0 version of the game. So it is the healer of healers, and it does nothing but heal. I mean, until we get into Blood Lilies, but I am rapidly getting out of my depth for this bit. Can you tell I've never picked up a White Mage's staff? Speaking of, it's exactly what the icon for this job is, and you may predict I'm going to call it uninspiring, chuck it in C tier and move on with my life, but actually, okay, I was going to do exactly that until I scrolled through the wiki page for the White Mage, because yeah, staffs are kind of iconic to White Mages. Throughout the entirety of the Final Fantasy franchise, and even beyond, they are white flowing robes and staffs, all floral themed and saving the day when I yeet myself off the edge of the battlefield. So if anyone would just to be represented by their weapon, a White Mage is a good one. But that's not even all they did. There is more subtlety at play here, some of which we'll get to later, but for now, look at the arc on the top of that staff. That could be two things. First, it could be a planet with a moon orbiting it, harkening to the White Mage's geomantic roots with spells like stone. Additionally, the arc is reminiscent of the lilies in the hood element that the White Mage utilizes in their core rotation at higher levels. So it's a nice little homage to the past and the present of the class. I'm going to give it a B tier.
Hi, I'm Izuyoi Kuragane, and I am a White Mage. I started out originally as an Arcanist, and fell in love with Gridania the minute I set foot in it, and from that point forward, I knew I just had to indulge the whims of the Conjurer's Guild, and have stuck with the class ever since. I have always had something of an inclination to support roles, and so naturally being the healeriest of healers has always appealed. And there's always been something about that, having to prioritize triaging and keeping everybody not on the floor, that really sticks with me.
It's good that there are people like you on the battlefield, because I am about as far away from that as possible. So the balance is very good.
I will pick you up anytime you need.
So the crux of this video is looking at the job icons, the job stones, the ones on the market board for all of the classes. Are they something you generally think about, or do they just sort of fade into the background?
With the exception of a few of the stranger ones, they're not something that I ever really think about. I feel like a lot of them are fairly self-explanatory and nothing too abstract.
A few people have brought up the stranger ones. What do you consider to be the stranger ones?
Probably Monk stands out as being a bit peculiar. I can kind of see where it's coming from. It's got a clawishness about it, but it takes a bit of thinking to get there. I mean, even where I started with Arcanist strikes me as a bit unusual. It seems to have very little to do with what the class actually does, either as a summoner or as a scholar.
Looking at your icon, looking at the White Mage icon, are you a fan of it? Do you like it? I would ask what it's supposed to be, but it's kind of self-evident.
So the White Mage's icon, I do feel, is pretty straightforward. Like, it is a staff, and I feel like the roundness of that staff kind of tells you something about what it's trying to achieve. And so I feel like we're pretty lucky to have an icon that just tells you on the face of it kind of what we're doing and what we're about.
I hadn't considered the roundness of it. There is a certain gentleness to sort of the shape of it that does match the White Mage quite well. I hadn't spotted that before.
Well, you can have that one for free.
So if you were to take White Mage's icon amongst the rest of them and put the White Mage on a tier list, where on the standard S tier to F tier, where is it going?
Oh, tiers. I think I would give it a solid A tier. It's distinct and stands out. It gets the job done, but it's nothing that's completely revolutionary and game changing.
The Scholar is a pair of glasses, because they're fucking nerds. Astrologian is the kind of healer that... Oh, no, okay, let's take it back. The Scholar icon is a pair of glasses, because they're fucking nerds. Specifically the kind of nerds so nerdy that they actually went extinct because people stopped reading books that hard that they learned how to summon fairies. But thanks to the power of a specky little Lalafell in the Marauders Guild of Limsa Laminsa, the power to delegate your healing to a little fae is now right back in fashion. And as I stated up top, the icon is a pair of glasses, which sure, that's a good thing to represent Scholar, except they don't wear glasses in-game. Like the headgear you get for hitting the capstone levels of mortarboards, graduation hats, which is cute, and you totally could have used that, and also made it double as a shield, since Scholar is the first shield healer. Some of those pieces of headgear do come with glasses as well, I think, but the meat and potatoes of that gear is the mortarboard, and that is a very scholarly object to use in your icon. I mean, maybe the arch of the top of the glasses is supposed to be reminiscent of a force field. Perhaps that is what they're doing, and that's kind of clever. I do like that. But I feel they could have thought about it for at least 10 more minutes. Or perhaps the icon was created before the job was fully fleshed out. Either way, while it does represent the class, I feel like it was the lowest hanging fruit. Also, it kind of looks like you started drawing the TripAdvisor logo and gave up halfway through. So I can't give it any higher than a C tier. Astrologian is the kind of healer that appeals to people that were really into Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Magic the Gathering as a kid. You draw your hand and utilize the heart of the cards to heal and do buffs and stuff, I think. You have specific cards that do bigger buffs for certain job types, which is a nice level of chance and luck to the job. Or, well, it used to. But then Dawn Trail rolled around and I guess everyone's cool uncle taught them how to stack decks, do false shuffles and count cards, because now the Astrologian can just draw one of two hands at will. In my opinion, that takes out the entire personality of the class in exchange for making it more consistent, but I suppose that is, to most endgame players, that's way more important, but who am I to say? Either way, the job icon for the Astrologian represents two cards in a large, wide arc. Now immediately, this is getting a high grade from me. Not only is it a great abstraction of the weapon that the astrologian uses, a star globe with the trademark cards orbiting it, which is absolutely iconic of the job, but it's also vaguely space-like, with the Ark possibly being a planet in the background of the image. And a class like Astrologian, which as you can tell from the name, is very much inspired by, powered by, and motivated by space and the stars, this is a perfect thing to sneak into the inspiration for the icon. This is easily another A tier from me. Top marks. Sage is the newest healer in the job pool, powered by science magic to make those magical floating Dr. Octopus arms go pew pew with laser beams that somehow make your healing better. Look, I'm going to be real with you. I picked up Sage a little bit ago and I got immediately overfaced by all of the buttons and modifiers. I was immediately out of my depth, so I just gave up and retreated to a nice easy level 30 Scholar. So I don't really know what I'm talking about, but I know it goes pew pew, and I know that this is the Sage icon. And I'm going to be real with you, I came into this section wanting to write a glowing review of the Sage icon. It's very cool. It looks like a pew-pew laser beam, but it's also reminiscent of the cross that generally means healing without encroaching into the Geneva Convention breaking territory. There are also stars alluding to the sciencey nature of the class, and of course they're supposed to literally represent the 4 floaties that the Sages use to do their business. It should all right be an A-rank match. But I just don't like it. It's muddy, and it's messy, and it looks like a weird little spaceship, and why does just one of these little doodads have a hole in it? I don't like it. I can't even really tell you why, it just misses the mark for me. D tier.
Okay, I'm Arishka Talan, and I play Sage. I have always liked shield healing. I originally started off as Arcanist, played Summoner for a while, and then sort of drifted into playing Scholar. And then when Endwalker came out, I was like, ooh, new shield healer. And I just fell in love with it. I love it so much. It's so much fun to play. It's so versatile. I just have such a good time with it.
Thinking about going back to Sage, have you ever considered the icon for Sage or any of the other classes, or are they just sort of something that fades into the background for you?
When I first picked them up, I do consider them like, oh, what's this supposed to be? My main jobs, I do have fridge magnets of them, so I do look at them and think about them a little bit more, but not a great deal.
I mean, having fridge magnets, that's I think more than the average person. That's more than most people are spoken to.
Yeah, my best friend went to Japan and picked some up for me from the Eorzea Cafe.
So what do you think of the Sage icon? What do you think it's supposed to be? Do you like it?
I do like the Sage icon. I believe it's meant to be the Neoliths, which is the catch-all term for the Sage weapons. Yeah, I feel like it represents what it's meant to represent fairly well. It's sort of like an if you know, you know kind of situation.
Yeah, quite similar to the samurai in that way.
Yeah, because that's the guard of the handle, right?
Yeah. There's the crux of this video is I'm building a big tier list. If you were to rank the icon for the Sage on a tier list, where would it go and why?
I'd put it at A, because I think it, like I said earlier, I think it depicts what it's meant to depict really well. And I don't know if you knew this, but they sort of took into account some feedback from the community.
Oh.
When they revealed the Sage icon, some people were saying it gave them trypophobia, which is the fear of holes. And in after fans were saying that, they actually redesigned the icon to take the holes out of the top 3 Neoliths.
Oh, is that why only the bottom one has the hole in it? I did
Yes.
wonder. Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool.
So, we're on to the last role. We've done tanks, we've done healers, there's only DPS left. That means there shouldn't be too many left, right? Should just be another few to go. There are how many DPS classes? So starting off, we have the hand-to-hand fighter, Monk. The only class without a single ranged attack, because you can't throw your fist. That would be dumb. This isn't ARMS, this is Final Fantasy. Monk is again one of the legacy classes, the purest of the melee DPSs, so the icon is probably something sensible, like a fist, right? No, it's 3 lines. Did the monk turn into Wolverine when I wasn't looking? No? It's still just like punches and shit? Then why is the icon this Wolverine-ass claw mark? Like, I've seen talk that it's actually supposed to be a real close-up of a fist, like the POV of someone getting punched, and these 3 lines are supposed to be the 3 lines between the fingers as the fist is coming at you. And it's clever, but I think it missed the mark a little. We'll get to a good example of a POV icon in a little bit, which is a better example of it than this. I've also seen it said that these are supposed to be like action lines, you know, like when a comic book, when a fist flies across the panel, and if that is the case, it's cute, but it's not entirely thematic of the class. I don't know what it's doing, but whatever it is, it's missed the mark for me. This is a D tier.
My character name is Iko, and I am a monk. Basically, she's a character for a D&D campaign that's a cross, you know, like a cross between Final Fantasy and D&D. So we got to pick what, you know, classes we wanted to do, and considering a lot of my party were doing more magic stuff, I decided to go with the more melee attacks, and yeah, she sort of became a little monk. I thought I wouldn't like it as much as I did, but the more I played, the more it just got fun to just go okay, I'm just gonna run in and, you know, punch and stuff, and both in the game and, you know, in D&D and stuff. I still struggle with all of the mechanics in the game, sadly, but I do get it enough to fight on it.
So all of the classes in Final Fantasy are represented by these little job icons, which is the main sort of conceit of this video. Have you ever thought about the job icons either for Monk or just generally in the game, or are they something that you just sort of that just fade into the background for you?
I think some of them fade into the background, for me at least. The monk one, I didn't really remember it properly until, was it when I've had Christmas gifts from friends. They've given me the monk icon sort of presents, so a little badge and stuff. That's when I actually started to remember which one is the monk icon. I think to me it looks sort of like a cat scratch, or I don't know. So I sort of associate it with the sort of a knuckle duster sort of attack, I guess. And I guess because monks have in the game they have sort of it looks like blades at the end of their knuckle duster sort of weapons. I can't remember the name of them, sorry. Yeah, it's definitely a Wolverine sort of looking icon, isn't it?
So do you like it? Are you a fan of it, or do you think they could have done something better?
I think if there was a better icon for it, I can't think of, you know, I wouldn't be able to come up with it. It's like we said, it's a bit vague, but a lot of them tend to be in my opinion, they tend to be quite vague. So I guess it fits in that sort of, you know, sense.
So finally, if you were to put the monk's icon on a tier list, where would you put it?
Probably, to me, a D or something. It's not really memorable enough to me. I think because I also have like another character which is like Arcanist and stuff like that. They have like the little triangle, and I associate that with their headgear. So to me, I can't really remember all that much of the monk one. Yeah, it's not that like, yeah, it's just there. It's just there.
Next up, time to enter Estinian's Dragoon Cave and learn the secret power of flinging yourself off the edge of the arena before the big boss has a chance to do it themselves. It's all mind games, see, it's all part of the plan. They never see it coming. I mean, think about it. If you duty popped into the Cinder Drift and instead of fighting you, the ruby weapon looked you dead in the eye and backflipped off into the abyss, how would you respond? You'd be thrown right off kilter. You prepared for homing laser, not I'm going home laser. But enough talking about my tactical genius. Let's talk about the icon for the Azure Dragoon and his fellow Dragooners. Now, I'm going to admit, I didn't see a dragon when I first looked at this. I'm not sure what I did see, but it wasn't a dragon. Just some like abstract shape, or perhaps the tip of the lance. If the tip of the lance reading is intentional along with the dragon head motif, then it's really clever, because it takes the mechanical and metaphorical aspects of the Dragoon class and seamlessly works them together. You know, I came in preparing to give this a C and move on, but the more I'm looking at it, the more I'm liking it. It's clean, it's multifaceted, and it couldn't be mistaken for any other class. I mean, until they bring in a horse riding job. My main problem with it is the interior shape of the main body. It doesn't look enough like a dragon's face, nor does it really add anything to the lance reading either. I don't know, it just seems like it's in there for the sake of flair. But that alone isn't going to pull this any lower than A tier.
Hey, I'm Lolito, Castellito, I'm Lanosian, a middle child, and I'm a kick-ass dragoon. I grew up on a farm in South Lanosia with my parents and siblings. They're Lalafell, so I'm pretty sure I was adopted. But I spent my days helping out in the field, you know, picking fruit, tending to animals, stuff like that. But sometimes, like, wild animals attack the farm. Rats get into the grain, galagos like to steal all our fruit, but goobus are particularly dangerous since they have quite the reputation for Lalafell in flesh. One day, one particularly large one attacked my farm. Somehow, the lumbering beast snuck up on my sister and tried to eat her. My older brother ran to get his axe, but I grabbed the closest thing to hand, and that was a pitchfork. I lunged towards the big bastard, giving it a good few blows before it released her and turned its attention towards me. I fought back until my brother came back with his axe and we felled the beast together. Next few days, it was all anyone on the farm could talk about, and someone mentioned I fought like a lancer. With the increase of attacks after the calamity, I thought to myself that maybe I should train up as one. So I left home for the Lancers Guild in Gridania. I spent my time there before deciding to explore the land as an adventurer, and eventually I found myself in Kurthus. There I learned about the Dragoons, who are like even more powerful Lancers. I found myself training with one of them for a while, and after a few more adventures, you find me here now.
Quite the story. You've been on quite an adventure, I see.
That I have.
So what do you like about being a lancer or being a dragoon? Like, why did you stick with it for this long?
I mean, what's not to love? You get a big pointy stick, you stab things with it, and then at the same time, you do some cool flips and use cool powers. What's not to like?
Obviously, this project is about talking about the job icons. Are they something you think about, or do they just sort of fade into the background as you're adventuring?
I mean, sometimes you're on the road for a while, and you don't really have anything else to do, and sometimes you kind of just look at your job stone. And sometimes I think about it.
What do you think the dragoon icon is supposed to be?
Well, I suppose it could be a dragon. The dragoons of Ishgard do utilise attacks inspired by their old enemies. Or it could be a spearhead, like the end of a lance. Maybe it's a down arrow, like how dragoons like jump up and then down. Maybe it's neither. Maybe it's all of them. Who knows?
I mean, the great thing about this is it could easily be all of them. I hadn't even considered it being an arrow because, like you said, what goes up must come down. Do you like it? Are you a fan of it, or is it just something that you put up with?
I'd say I like it. It's sweet, it's simple. I feel like if you just got out a bunch of job stones and showed them to some random bastard on the street and said, which one's the dragoon one, they'd probably get that right.
I mean, yeah, it does. It's the one that looks the most like a dragon. Can't really argue with that. So I'm making a big tier list. And as part of this, I want to ask people that play the classes, people that see those job stones every day, where would you put the Dragoon icon on a tier list of all the icons if we're talking S tier all the way down to F tier?
I mean, gets the point across. What else do you really need a Jobstone icon for? I'd say it's S rank.
I have personal beef with the ninja class. Bit of a personal history with this one. First of all, when we're in this generic fantasy setting, I usually play a rogue. D&D, Baldur's Gate, any other fantasy RPG, I'm a rogue. So to be presented with the class selection screen and be told, nah, if you want to play rogue, you gotta, one of the basic fantasy classes. You gotta pick something else and then get to level 10 and be in Limsa Lominsa. For real? I'll be honest, I did not start my Aeolzian journey off on the right foot. I had to slug through 10 levels of a class I didn't want to play, from only the short list that starts in Limsa, just to get the opportunity to talk to the Rogues Guild. And it's the only class that works like this. Feels like that should have been patched out a bit ago, But I got through, and I ended up really enjoying the Rogues questline. It's one of my favourite job quests, in fact. And then we got to the ninja upgrade. And not only do the job quests become far less engaging in my opinion, but the job takes this weird swerve where it becomes about summoning frogs instead of being a sneaky little rogue. And there's nothing wrong with summoning a big frog. I love a big frog. But to go from rogue to this is just a bit weird. I'm just glad Viper exists to fulfill my roguish desires now. But enough about that. Let's talk about the reason we're here, the icon. Well, what is it? It could be a shuriken in mid-flight, it could be Doton, or even the dust cloud that hits you when you do a mudra as seen from above. I've even seen it described as action lines from doing the melee attacks, again as seen from above. All of these could be equally true, but they all also evoke the same feeling of movement and speed and magic and ostentatiousness, which is a handful of adjectives that are perfect to describe the ninja. I wish I had more to say about this one, since there is simultaneously so much going on, but it is so simple. It's elegant in its simplicity. I love it. I gotta give it an A tier. Go ninja, go ninja, go! Samurai is honestly the class I forget exists the most. Like, I couldn't even tell you one interesting thing about the samurai class. Oh, except that you can do that dramatic standoff thing where you sheath your weapon and glare at the boss, which is cool, I suppose. Sounds like a good way to get squished into a fine paste on the floor, but you do you. Thankfully, the icon is one of those really interesting ones, because you get a lot of people, when they first see it, they go, huh? What's that? Because what is it? A little triangle with a huge force field around it? Is it the samurai's big hat? But to people that know about samurai or about swords in general, which for the record doesn't include me, I googled it, swords are for losers, they will quickly identify it as a tsuba, which is the name of the flat circular handguard on a samurai's sword. The trademark's triangular hole makes it clear what this is supposed to be, but it can also be interpreted as a samurai sword being pointed straight at you, with the blade in the center and the handguard thing being the only thing you can properly make out. Either way, it gives off vibes of balance, stability, and power, which are things that the samurai should be evoking. It's also very clear to its target market, which is people that would be interested in playing as a samurai. Or that would be the case if this were a branding logo advertising samurai. In its current usage, its target market is every player who needs to quickly identify the class at a glance in the menus. And while it takes some thinking to associate it with samurai, it does at least have a very unique shape, which cannot be mistaken for any other class. This is very middle of the road, despite being very visually interesting. Let's call it B tier.
I am Sinove Blackthorn, and I'm a samurai. Tried a bunch of classes, was looking for something melee, which felt nice and outputty, and also had very nice weapon design, and samurai had a whole bunch of payoff attacks, which felt nice and explosive. Oh yeah, and the defensive move had a very brief cooldown, so it's very easy to react to any enemy attack that you've moved too slow to with a quick hit of the button that has a 5-second duration time, making it feel more actiony, more reactive as you sort of catch the attacks right then and have it ready by the time it comes around next time.
Does a real good job at making you feel cool. And that's I think is a really important factor in any good job design. So the crux of this video is, of course, based around the icon design for each of the jobs. Are those job icons anything you think about while you're playing, or do they just sort of fade into the background?
I think about them every so often, because I go to the shop to buy like fashion options every so often, and I see them and I think to myself, what is that? And sometimes I take a moment to think or recognize it, or there's a couple I just have to memorize because they're kind of abstract.
And I think some people would say that the samurais is kind of abstract, looking at your specific icon. What's your opinion on the samurai's icon?
I thought that was abstract for quite a while. I still do a bit. At first I thought it was like a throwing disc you can see in strange fantasy media, but samurais don't use that. I thought again, and the best I could do was like a top-down view of a samurai hammering out whirlwind AoE attacks, which sort of works, because I notice when I'm using a lot of area effect stuff, I'm just whirling wildly around in circles.
I mentioned a similar thing when I was talking about the icon before the interview. I do think there's an aspect of the sort of the top down AoE stuff, because it does look very sort of motion based. But I've heard it's supposed to be the handguard from the katanas, or the samurai sword being pointed directly at you.
The sword pointing straight at you does kind of work, and it is make for a pretty dramatic image. The handguard, though, I never had a good look at the handguard, so I can't say anything about that. But I did consider that.
I think one of the good things about these kind of icons is they can be sort of interpreted in multiple ways. But in general, do you like it? Do you think it's a good icon, or do you think they could have done better?
I kind of like this icon. It expresses the feel of the class still. Like, lots of curving, sharp lines, like the katana itself. Has a very slashy feel to its look. So that kind of works with it still, even if it's not like a direct interpretation of the katana from the side. But overall, the symbol kind of nicely catches the feel of the class, and the class is all about selling this sleek feeling of bursting, slick-looking samurai attacks, and I'm still kind of in love with that. I'd say A on a S to F scale.
It's time to get edgy up in here. This is the class you play that if your favourite video game and childhood crush were both Shadow the Hedgehog. And I know I made that same joke for Dark Knight, but it's just as true for this as well. This is the class that says, fuck you, I don't need friends, I can summon my own friends. The class that genuinely feels a little weird to play after hanging around with Zero in the Endwalker post-MSQ quests. Like, it's heavily implied that they're being dragged through the void to do my bidding against their will, and like, Zero was pretty cool, and I don't want to be doing stuff like that to cool people. I just wanted funny ghost friends, and sometimes make that funny ghost friend inhabit my very flesh being. With that breakdown aside, let's break down their icon instead, which is almost great, but ends up being not great. I mean, look at it. It's got a scythe in it, which is a cool shape, it's iconic to the Reaper, and definitely very unique. Alone or with a different kind of flourish, this would be great. But then they drop trow and take a big dump all over it with this stupid circle. What's this supposed to be? Now, instead of looking cool and dark, which would be thematically appropriate, it looks like Kirby rowing a gondola. It looks like Mr. Peanut's monocle and mustache. It looks like... well, it just looks bad. And from a purely design standpoint, it looks clunky, it looks unbalanced, and it just looks wonky. Like, it's clearly off. Like, something is wrong with it. And it's not just the circle. The fact that the handle of the scythe goes past the blade irritates me too. Like, I don't care if it's accurate, it just doesn't look good. It looks wonky, it looks bad, it's weirdly weighted, and it doesn't capture the vibe of the job anymore. F tier. And finally, the job I took on my travels through Taral, and I had so much fun and felt like an absolute beast, taking anything that looked at me remotely funny and putting it straight in the blender. It's that roguish hit I was looking for, even if it's not based on stealth and traps and stuff, but it flows nicely, it really hits that power fantasy for me, and even if, in my opinion, the job quests were a bit naff and the lore behind the job powers are a bit lacking, it's still a cool feeling and powerful class. Viper. The only downside to have about this class is doing it in any content below level 80 with Viper feels very terrible. You have 3 buttons to press the entire dungeon and it makes you feel so neutered and slow and weak. Like, come on, give me the cool stuff. Don't make me launch into an entire tirade about how the entire synced dungeon system needs reworking. This video is going to be long enough already. But let's get ourselves back on track talking about the Viper job icon. First off, it does a great job illustrating the snaky vibes of the job, with these 2 shapes doubling as either snake eyes or snake teeth, but of course they also represent the 2 swords that the Viper is known for, and I love the symmetry this has. For Viper specifically, that is a class very much based in 2s, a lot of 2-button combos, 2 different attack methods for the 2 different swords. The Viper is a class of 2s, so having 2 distinct and mirrored glyphs in its icon is perfect. Well, nearly perfect. Because at the top of this video, I mentioned something specific about pictograms. They should work together as a set, meaning they should use similar visual language. And the Viper, in my opinion, deviates from the visual language of this set of pictograms, particularly in the 3D version. It's a lot flatter with far more subtle highlights and shadows compared to every other job in the set. It's not a massive thing, but it stops this from being the best that it possibly could be. It's still an A tier though, and no, I'm not biased. Okay, I have never understood why the bow and arrow class is a bard, or why the bard isn't a magic class. Like, in my head, bards use instruments to channel magic through them, but I suppose support classes don't really fit into the tank healer DPS paradigm, so fuck it, they're Robin Hood now. According to the lore, I guess they're literally just archers who learn to sing, so fuck it, that's a class now. I can vibe with that. And the icon is, well, I think it's pretty neat. It's a harp, or a lute at first glance, and quite a nice one at that. I mean, it's very aesthetically pleasing, the asymmetry makes it distinct without being weighted in a weird way. It's a nice lute, it's very bardic. But it gets better, because that lovely asymmetry isn't just for shits and giggles, it also makes the lute double as a bow. And that's very cool. It's just the right amount of subtle without being too obscure, and I really like it. Despite, in my opinion, the bard class being a bit characteristically confused, the icon does a really good job in showcasing both sides of this characteristic confusion, balancing them perfectly in this icon. That's it. I've not got much more to say about it. It's a solid B tier. No. Solid A tier.
It was at this point that I realized that Suke, the man who had agreed to talk to me about the bard icon, is from the Castir tribe, which is a tribe of Aura, the top mute. Fortunately, I provided him with the questions written down, and he wrote me out some answers that I'm going to just relay to you now. My name is Suke, and I'm a bard. What is your main class? I dabble. I do a lot of blacksmithing, alchemy, carpentry, gather all my own materials, so I mine and gather a lot. Oh, you meant combat class. Sorry. My main class is a bard, although I'm often a warrior by circumstance. How did you end up with that as your main? I'm a sucker for a bard. I like the jack-of-all-trades support types, and I especially like when they aren't just full casters in a sheet music trench coat. It's very satisfying to play. A little proccing is a treat, but still that satisfying rotation, so I still feel like I'm meaningfully contributing DPS-wise, but I get to help the healers with heal buffs and mitigations on occasion. Have you ever thought about the icon for that class before? I'm aware of its existence and associate it with being a bard, though I don't think that's what you're actually asking me. I have not thought about it particularly in depth. What do you think it's supposed to be? It's a harp, or a lyre. Do you like it, and why? I like it. It's a pretty simple design, but I like that about it. Why complicate it? I'm a bard. I play a lyre. Straight to the point. I like this guy. Doesn't mince words. Moving on.
Okay, before we get started with this class, I have an important question. Machinist or machinist? I've been pronouncing it machinist the whole time, but like half the players I know say it one way, and the other half say it the other way. I'm just going to go with whatever feels right in the moment. So if I swap between them, that's why. With that out of the way, Machinist. It's a fucking gun. For the gun class. It goes pew pew. What else could it possibly have been? The gun boys have the gun. Jokes aside, I don't hate the gun, but it does kind of have that "we've thought about this for 10 minutes" kind of feel, especially with the higher level Machinist becoming less of a gunslinger, or more of like a general engineer class. So maybe a wrench or a gear would have been more fitting with that context. But it's not a bad gun. It's a little stylized, kind of a stumpy rifle, but kind of a pistol as well, hints of a pump action shotgun. It's not a super accurate gun, so it might piss off the gun people, but it has all the gun bits that you know it's a gun at a simple glance. Gun out of gun. Gun tier, I mean B tier.
Hi, I'm August Gale, and I'm a machinist. To start with, I was an archer and later a bard, but then as soon as I got to Ishgard, I heard about these firearm things, and I thought, hey, why not check them out? So I paid a visit to the manufactory, and, well, let's just say I fell in love with this thing. It's just kind of fun to carry all of these devices and be able to let loose with, you know, everything from a drill to a flamethrower to blasting chains at people. It's fairly straightforward, and the fact that I can mainly focus on my own thing and trust everyone else I am fighting alongside to do their thing as well, rather than having to keep an eye on what they're doing at all times. I think that makes it easier for us to be more efficient and fight better.
Obviously, all the classes in Eorzea, they're represented by these icons. Machinist is I think maybe the most on the nose one. So I would ask, what do you think it's supposed to be? But I mean, yeah. Have you ever thought about the icon for the class before, or is it just one of those things that fades into the background?
Well, the job icons are something I've never really thought too deeply about beyond simply using them to recognize who's what. It's just one of those things that, you know, is part of the background noise of living in such a chaotic place. I'm going to be honest, I wish it was a bit more stylized. It looks nice, it works, it gets the job done, but it just feels a bit bland compared to some of the others, you know? I mean, to an extent, I kind of envy the samurai job icon, or even ninja or Dark Knight. They get some really cool stuff, and we just have a gun.
What else would you use if not just a gun? I mean, you're the gun class.
That is a good question, and I don't have a good answer for you.
You've done a bit of comparison, and the whole point of this project was to make a big tier list. So if you had to put Machinist into a tier, where would you put it?
Probably around C tier. It gets the job done. It's not offensive to look at, but it's not something that I would plaster on my wall. Let's put it that way.
Dancer was one of the first classes I picked up, and I've taken it all the way to level 85 at this point, and I still haven't found that point where it clicks, you know? Like, I always feel like I'm never doing enough damage to keep up, and that might be like actual raw numbers, or maybe just the fruity little jigs and throwing rings like Sonic the Hedgehog after he gets clocked by a badnik just don't have the same oomph as hitting them with a big sword or shooting them with a gun. Maybe it's a me thing. I don't know. What do you think about Dancer? Maybe it's a skill issue. It's probably a skill issue. But you're not here to hear me bitch and whine about not pulling my own weight in the area. You're here to see me rank this Kingdom Hearts looking nonsense on a tier list. And as an aside, when trying to look this up and see what it was supposed to be, I found a Reddit thread from shortly before this and Gunbreaker were released full of people insisting that this was the Gunbreaker icon, because it was Lion Heart, and the Gunbreaker icon was a chakram flying through the air, or two chakrams being held together. I suppose by my earlier metrics, that means both of them fail the test, but that's only if we consider the opinions of Redditors to be valid. So, moving on. What is it? I mean, it's clearly an abstracted heart, which kind of looks like a fan that's half open, but it also bears some resemblance to the technical step HUD, you know, that infinity symbol. But for some reason, the infinity symbol has been separated. It's definitely got some Thavnarian influence about it, which is tonally appropriate. But less about what it is supposed to be. More importantly, it feels like a dancer icon without being symbolic of anything directly. It's flowy and sultry and kind of sexy, which is the vibe that dancers evoke. And in that sense, I kind of like it. B tier. Home stretch. 4 more to go. The magical DPS classes, including my main class, which is not this one. But I've always had a soft spot for Black Mages. Despite never actually playing a Final Fantasy game except 14, the classic Black Mage design has always been the peak of little guy to me. Big hat, big coat, simple block colours, looks like the most cuddleable guy out of the entire party but could descend a massive meteor on you with just a thought. That is the absolute peak. And speaking of massive meteors, that is exactly what this icon is. And while there's not a lot to complain about here, I quite like how it's reminiscent of the Final Fantasy XIV logo itself, since one would argue that Black Mage is one of the most iconic classes out of the entire franchise. It's a nice touch. But there just isn't much to overanalyze here. You took one of the most iconic moves from the most iconic classes, you abstracted it perfectly. No other class can summon a meteor, so you know instantly what it is. A tier.
Well, hi. I am Red Windrush, and I am a Black Mage. I feel like a lot of the problem I had with picking a class is that I never really kind of like vibed with a lot of the other ones. I tried a lot of things. I think I played most of the game as a White Mage for a long time because I liked the idea of being supportive, but that kind of ran its course after about 3 expansions worth of content. So yeah, I bounced around a lot of different things trying to find something that just kind of like hit a nice vibe, felt like cool to fight as, which is what I think the main thing I look for. Something that makes me feel cool while I'm doing the combat. And I feel a lot of people sort of seem to think that Black Mage is very complicated, which is why I kind of put off for it for so long. And then I finally tried it and I was like, this is it. This is exactly why. This is the one class that I felt had the weight in combat. Like everything feels like when you hit things with a spell really hard, it feels like it hits hard. And that's kind of it just did all the good chemicals were flying around in my brain as soon as I played that. And that's just how I've stuck with it as much as I can. This is like probably the most static rotation of any class, even with the changes they've made. This is the most static rotation I've ever had. It's like Fire 3, several Fire 4s until maybe the buff doesn't work, Fire 1 to reset it, and then just keep doing that until you run out of mana, and then just go back around again. I think the people feel it's complicated because it's not very mobile, or at least it wasn't until like Endwalker, with the way they've changed how ley lines work, where you can reposition them if you want to, which I still think is bonkers. But yeah, like that's the complicated part, is that you need to kind of know where to stand to not get hit, because you're very stationary. You are literally a turret, like a big flaming turret. More so even than machinists. At least they get to run around and like, you know, fire their gun. I have to stand in my magical, like, colorful circle and hope for the best. But yeah, it's so much fun when you actually manage to kind of get into it. Like, it's so satisfying when you can like get the positioning just right and do all the janky things like slide casting to like make sure that you don't lose any of that damage. It's so good, man. I'd say I hope I'm communicating how much fun I find this class.
I am actually tempted to try Black Mage just off this conversation now. You've sold it to me.
One thing I will say, though, is that please, I mean, I know some classes suffer it more than others. Please, if you are picking up Black Mage, be prepared to suffer from the changes every 10 levels problem. Like, there's some spells that are channeled when you're level 70 that are instant casts when you're level 80. And it's sometimes if you end up going back down through it, it's really hard to remember what it is that's like and what kind of like iteration of Black Mage you are. So if there's anything, like, I hope that maybe they try and like uniform the way spells work and lower levels to make it like the higher levels. I feel like that would bring more people into the class.
I feel like that seems to be a problem that a lot of especially like the later classes have, is the level sync problem. When you go down, you either feel useless or you have to completely change.
Yeah, because like Black Mage for me, like those first, like this is again please hold you on those first 50 levels. Sometimes it feels real bad. You sound like you're just standing there waiting for cast to go off to hit them with the spells. And like, if you're one of these people that maybe dabbles in a bit more of the dark arts of third-party things, those numbers don't give you the good times if you're focused on numbers. But once you hit 70, 80, 90, and now up to 100, even with the changes that people don't like about Black Mage, it still is very satisfying when you kind of get everything together.
So the crux of this video is looking at the job icons, the ones on the job stones, ones on the market boards. Is that something you ever really think about, or is it something that's just sort of faded into the background set dressing?
I feel like even at the start, like the imagery on the job stones didn't really kind of jump to me, except the Black Mage one, because it's a meteor, and no matter how long I play this game, that first cutscene you get when you very first play the game, showing the kind of the death of 1.0, and how we've loreified it into being becoming a realm reborn. It just having that kind of imagery of a meteor will just always kind of hit quite hard.
So even before you played Black Mage, that was the one icon that really spoke out.
Yeah, that's the one that really stuck out. I feel like the meteor was definitely from the Black Mage was it there. Even when it is a thaumaturge and it's obviously changed, when you see it, it's okay. And also it kind of helps changing back over to gameplay for a second, is that when you actually finally do get to use your LB3 as a Black Mage, you drop a meteor, like a proper kind of behemoth end of the world meteor on a group of enemies. Yeah, you don't get to see it very often, but when you do,
it pays off. It all comes full circle. Everything pays off. It's great. Mm-hmm. So it feels like you're definitely a fan of the Black Mage's icon in general.
Yes, absolutely. Black Mage icon is high tier for me.
If you had to give it a specific high tier, if we're going from S tier to F tier, how high are you putting it?
I mean, I want to, as much as I'm personally biased to it, I want to say it's kind of A tier. It's it's iconic enough, but there are definitely fancier ones that I think are deserving of S. I think the Blue Mage one is real fun because it looks like the mask, like the Domino mask. That's always fun. I'm also I don't know why, I think it just appeals to the edgy 14-year-old for the Gunbreaker one. I don't know what it, just that kind of the Z shape with the slash over it. It's I think it's cool.
I'm not covering Blue Mage in this video, but if I was, it would be a very high A, maybe an S tier.
If you could find a Blue Mage main, I will be very impressed.
Speaking of classes that summon things, this class is the bad boy of the reading books in combat world. Summoning a pokey little fairy wasn't good enough for you? You want to do stuff like summoning entire gods to do your bidding? Well, Summoner is for you. The only compromise is you got to wear this stupid horn on your head while you do it. Wait, why are you going to that glamour dresser? Curses. Well, I guess there's no downside at all. And speaking of stupid horns, they really wanted to push the Summoner as the horny class, because their icon is that very horn. Because apparently Summoners have had horns throughout the entire history of Final Fantasy, so I guess I can forgive it for legacy reasons, even if it does look a bit goofy. But the thing about this icon is that it's not just a horn. The outer edge, the thing that makes it look like a witch's hat, to me that looks like a sextant or a compass for measuring angles. And have you ever looked into a Summoner's book? It's just angles. I don't know if they use angle magic to summon their friends into battle or something, but at least there's some design consistency there. And while I like that, I can't really rank it higher than a C tier. Red Mage. Now we're fucking talking. Best job in the game. Let's go. You want to cast spells at a safe distance? Red Mage has got you. You want to leap into the fray and slash away at the enemy? Red Mage has got you. What's this? The unthinkable has happened. The healer has gone down mid-battle. Red Mage has got you. Red Mage is the jack of all trades, master of every single fucking one. And they look suave as fuck while they do it, with consistently the best job outfits in the entire game. Can you tell this is my main? Anyway, the icon also whips ass, because there is so much going on. Because at first glance, yeah, it's just a sword with a glowy handle. But there's so much more at play here, because it's taken elements of both the white mage and the black mage's icons, since the red mage is a balance between the two. The handles of the sword's glowy bit is the fire trail from the black mage's meteor, and the sword itself is just the white mage's icon turned on its head. That's really clever, and it makes a very clear and distinct icon that tells you how the class is going to play as much as it does tell you what the class is. It is a magic class, but it is a fair bit different from the others. S tier. Still not biased. And finally, one of the newest classes added to the game along with the Viper, the Pictomancer, looked at Disney's Epic Mickey and went, okay, but what if? It's probably the most whimsical class in the entire game and has come out of the gate with just the best characterization compared to the rest of the crop. Its spells have this like super unique visual flair to them which draws them out of the crowd of generic magical explosions in a big way. And I'm a huge fan of just the general visuals of this class, and that extends to its icon as well. It clearly illustrates not only the class's main weapon, but also how it channels its magic. But there's something far more natural about the curves and the line work in this one compared to the rest. It looks far more hand-drawn than the others. While normally that would be a point against it, referring back to the icon set's rules that I talked about way back at the start of this video, I actually think this is a positive for this specific class. It adds to the character of the job in general, giving more of an indication of the playstyle while not looking or feeling out of place. This is one of those things where the rule has been broken, but the rule has been acknowledged before it's been broken, so it's been broken in a positive way. This is a really strong finish. This is an A tier icon. And well, that is the list. A lot more good than bad, with a fair few middling, and yes, there are more icons, class icons, Disciples of the Hand, Disciples of the Land, limited jobs. This, with just a look at the core jobs that people will see the most, I'm stopping here. If there's a massive outcry for the rest of the icons, maybe I'll do a part 2, but this is where we're stopping. And this is where my script stops as well, but I do want to keep talking, because this has been a big video, I think. I've not actually looked at the timer yet. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for entertaining me. Thank you to all of the people that I interviewed. All of their, if they do have social medias, all of those have been linked below. This has been a really fun little side jaunt that spanned ridiculously out of whack and became the biggest video I've ever made. So that's fun. I suppose I should ask you to do the YouTube things. So like, subscribe. I've got a Ko-fi link in the description. Check that out if you want. But yeah, thanks for watching. Have a beautiful rest of your day. And love you, bye.